it's a pleasure interacting with you right after lunch so that we know you're fed well and you'll be feeling sleepy, so we can say anything and get away with it. All right. So I'm Srivatsa, and we have a very diverse panel today. We're very happy that we have the right representation in terms of the panel so that we can do justice to this topic, that whatever you hear from us makes a good, complete picture. Since we have a paucity of time, it's 45 minutes, this is a topic that most of us are passionate about. We can keep talking about it for hours. So we'll try to make it concise. We'll try to not get into a few areas. For example, we'll not try to get into what is hot, what is not, or try to predict what technologies that you want to follow, or what should you start with, because there's plenty of material out there that you can leverage, whether it's jobs report that you can look at, or various technology trends that you can look at, or various curves that you can follow. So what we'll try to do is put our experience together to share some of our advice and wisdom with you, which will help in your careers, be it at the starting of your career, or be it at the early point in your career, or much later, hopefully. We'll try to bring in a bit of conflict also amongst our views, so that you know there are multiple paths to success, and there's no one right or one wrong way to do it. Interestingly, this is the third time I'm talking about open source careers in this conference, and I can say confidently that the last time I spoke about it, which was in 2010, nothing is the same. The world was a friendlier and a simpler place then. But what we'll try to do today is provide you a lens that makes it simpler, or views that can make it simpler. So let's get started. One of the things that we put in the skills part, before we get started, there's one line I need to add. I think for most of us, or for all of us, we represent different companies and organizations, and whatever views we share here, those are our personal views. We are not necessarily representing our company's views here. We're not acting as spokesmen. Rather, we're sharing our personal views as professionals. With that, let's start with the first word that was there in the topic. That's it, skills, right? You can look at skills in different ways, dissect it, bisect it. Try to simplify it. When I say skills to succeed in any career, let's say you need to be good open source engineers. Let's start with that goal. And to do that, why is it necessary to be a good engineer to start with, or what makes a good engineer? Maybe I want Suman to probably start with that.
Yeah, I think it's working. Yeah. Yeah, I think in today's world, as I was just talking to Srini yesterday, I started my career, I think, 12 years back. So it's not that long ago. But I see that there is a significant change that has happened in the last 5 or 6 years. And at the end of the day, whatever role we end up doing, I think as long as we are working towards technology or technology domain or any technology company, I think to stay relevant and to be very focused around technology, it's very important. And especially if you are starting off your career, right? So it's very important that we focus on core subjects. Oftentimes, what I've seen is, when we go for hiring, in the recent past, I've seen that people get into cloud, machine learning, data science, and all of that. So these things are good, and we all need to work on this. But at its core, to get started, what matters is the core fundamentals. And when we think about those things, I think you will find almost 70 to 80% of the core fundamental things you can explore, you can learn in the open source world. So I think it's very important, because we are living in a world where every second person is an engineer, and to make yourself, special out of the whole crowd, you need to do something different. It's not only, just to show that you are doing something different, but it's for your own, sake.
Thanks, Suman. Is this better, or is this better? Should I hold it? Yeah. So, Related question to that. Um, Many times when we say open source careers, um, believe us, there's nothing like a pure open source career. You work on products or you work on projects or anything that you work on. Sometimes you work on closed source things, sometimes you work on open source things. And especially when you pick a job to work somewhere, you have to be equally adept at both and know the difference in terms of how both of them operate, what are the rules of engagement at play, what should you do, what should you not do. Um, at the same time, open source is fun, and being here, a lot of you, or most of you, or all of you are passionate about open source. So, irrespective of what job you pick, uh, when you are a good engineer, on top of that, what makes you a good open source engineer? There could be certain traits, or there could be certain behaviors or practices. Maybe we'll ask Shirin to talk about that.
Yep, thank you. I think that's a wonderful question. Because when we talk about the software engineer's career, I think open source will be a best platform for the engineers to explore. What they would look for is 3 types of skills, right? One is the soft skill, because open source is built on core philosophies of collaboration. How well you are collaborating. If somebody finds an issue in your code, how well you are reacting to it, right? How you are playing an evangelist role. So soft skills do really matter a lot to be successful in open source, and I would say it would be in any corporate world as well. Then the next type of skills, which will be more generalized skills, we say, are security. Are you aware of security principles that you would need to comply with? No matter what technology stack you are using, agile, DevOps practices, security, secure by design principles. If you are aware of these horizontal, generic skills, that will really help you to take steps forward towards. Then again, it's all depend on what you like more, what you are more compassionate about. I like Rust, or I like Python, or this is my community, I would like to go and contribute back, learn. But basically it is a bit more, not only being technically strong, you need to have that learner's mindset that will enable you to continuously learn and be successful in your journey.
Yeah. Thanks, Shirin. Yesterday when I was talking to Bharat, one of the aspects he touched upon, especially around core skills, was he used the word infrastructure skills. I deliberately captured that phrase, and without me explaining what it means, I want Bharat to talk about why infrastructure skills kind of propel somebody's careers forward, or why is it a common base for many open source careers?
Yeah. So let me put a counter view to what Sirin was saying. What I believe is this, all the people who are sitting here, right? You are really passionate about open source, that's why you're sitting here, right? And because you already know open source, to a large extent you also know that people who are attracted towards open source are the people who wants to build something. They really do not want to use until it is really useful to them. And whenever you basically are looking at something and you say, oh, this does not help me in A, B, C, D scenarios, and you start building it yourself, right? And that's when you start getting into the open source part. So that way, my humble opinion on that is that if you are looking at building something for yourself first, right, you are already into open source. Because first you will build it for yourself, and then you will give it to people to make sure that they start improving on top of it, right? The infrastructure skills which I was talking to Sri yesterday was mainly from 2 parts. One is anybody who's working on open source will mostly be touching upon 2 things. One is Linux or Unix style OSs. Second is networking. And if you, any of you are basically good at any of these 2 or both of them, 90% of the thing people do, whether it is application development or application deployment, or nowadays buzzword like cloud or Kubernetes and so on, will obviously touch these 2 things. So these 2 things is what I really refer to as the infrastructure part of it, if you are really good at these two skills, I'm sure that it will be much, much easier for you uh, to do multiple things. One is that you will be able to understand and appreciate what is being developed or how things work. Second thing is it will be easier for you to develop on top of these skills and start contributing to various things which is happening out there. Yeah.
Thanks, Bharat. Are the panelists helping you, or are we confusing you still? Let's try to bring in a bit more of contradictions and conflicts as well as we move along. That will keep the discussions interesting. So, when we keep talking about open source professionals, people who have a career with a large flavor of open source, one of the things that we look for, or many of you are curious about, is there a DNA that runs across all of them? If we create a new phrase that says open source DNA, like he seems to have the open source DNA. I'm just curious to know, any of you can pick this, what does a professional with an open source DNA look like, in your own words?
I think
so. One word which comes to my mind, which summarizes the DNA of an open source professional, is curiosity. Endless curiosity to explore, develop, and continuously make it better. The old school thought of Kaizen. How do you keep making it better? How do you keep questioning the status quo? How do you keep challenging whatever you see, and how do you keep improving? I think that's the DNA that I think defines an open source professional.
Nice. Is there a different
And also
answer?
ability to share, right? He's so compassionate about and so proud of what he built that he would like to share it with the rest of the world. And that makes it even better, right? I think that is also fundamental.
I would say that taking something which is already existing and then go ahead and improve on top of it, and then as Shirin said, then start sharing it with everyone else out there.
What do you think, Salman?
Yeah, I think one of the things which we just discussed a while back is you should have an empathy towards your fellow developers. You look around wherever you are sitting now. You will find someone who is contributing to any one of the open source software or technology. You will find that person is very helpful in nature. I have not seen anyone who is working on open source or love open source who loves to work in isolation. So you need to help others, and once you start helping, you get help from others because it's mutually dependent on each other. So I think having a notion or a mindset to learn, as Bharat mentioned, and to share your learning. Unless and until you are sharing your learning, you never know which way you are going. And I think one of the best thing for open source, what I have seen across all the organization, is everyone are very humble. You won't realize what that person is, what position that person holds, unless and until someone else comes to you and tell that this is the person. So that is the character of any open source contributor or anyone who loves open source. So I think this is something that we should try to continue to have a healthy developer community in general.
That's nice. I like that. A question for most of you in the audience. How many of you think somebody who has to be good in open source, being humble is a part of their DNA? Or how many of you think when you start contributing to the open source, the sheer size of what you see and the sheer number of people you run into, that makes you humble? A versus B. How many of you think it's A? Okay, how many of you think it's B? Okay, a lot of you think it's B. Means when you encounter more and more talent, when you encounter the number of skills that you run into, the number of people with awesome credentials that you run into, and the sheer number of things that are still there to learn, it's always a humbling experience. I think that way open source, like mathematics, keeps most of us humble, right? It never makes you feel that you are on top of it and you know everything, right? So I think so far what we've done is we started with skills. What we want to do is build on that, look at after you start building initial skills, how do you convert that into expertise? And then once you start looking at expertise, how do you start creating niche experience for yourself, what domains you look at? And then while you're doing all this, learning is not going to be easy, right? You're continuously learning in a changing landscape. How do you learn? How do you stay on top of what you're learning? And then with all this, you're always part of the community. What role does community play in your career? And then what happens in the future? I think we need to touch all of that in the next half an hour or 20 minutes. So let's try doing that. Now that we spoke about skills, let's talk about expertise, because once you start gaining skills, it's not enough, right? You want to feel confident, you want to put those skills to use, you want to feel like an expert. Now, gaining expertise is not a destination, it's a journey, right? So maybe, again, we'll switch to Bharat before I have another question for Deepak later. So Bharat, what does the journey look like when you start? In the sense, how do you start that journey towards becoming an expert?
Yeah, so see, basically what really happens is that people start learning something out of the curiosity, which I think we talked about, right? The challenge what is really happening today is that there are just so many things out there which can be used to learn, right? But 99% of the people which I have interacted in the last 3-4 years, right, who are freshers, who are coming out of college and so on, right, they are focusing more on the theoretical part of it. They are just going through the videos and maybe some courses on various sites which are available. But what is really missing is the practical aspect of it. What they're really not doing is that, okay, if there is something which is being taught to them, how it really happens, which we generally call as like hands-on, right? That people should be more hands-on. So that is the biggest gap which I see from skills to expertise part today. Until people really start putting those theory into practice and do this day in, day out, right? They are not going to become an expert on any subject which they are looking at. So my suggestion is usually to all my own folks also is, whatever you are trying to understand, learn, please make sure that you obviously read the theory, but make sure that you try it out things. Whether it is you are learning Linux, networking, databases, whatever else. Yeah?
So let's say I want to join your team, and there are so many sources of information. I can do so many online courses, I can do so many certifications. So what's wrong with that? Why can't I be a good hire for you if I take a few MOOC courses and apply for a job?
So as I said, right, that people do take courses, right? The only thing what is missing is trying out things on their own hand. So when they really are put into some sort of work, right, where they need to try hands-on, all that theory evaporates, right? The only thing what you will really remember is when you have tried things on your own hands. So that becomes very, very important for us. So if you have done courses, very good. But if you have done practice, you have really tried your hands-on, that is what will separate you out.
Interesting. Well, yeah, someone.
Yeah, so I think I just echo what Bharat mentioned. And one of the things is, I cannot emphasize this more, especially for new, fresh graduates. No matter what you do and what you want to do, having the fundamentals is the most important thing. You go to any company for that matter, even if it is the role is around data engineering or machine learning or serverless container, whatever it is, they are not going to ask any questions around that. They're going to ask questions around storage, operating system, DSA, algo, whatever it is. So it's very important that to have those fundamentals right, and then move up in the ladder and try to find your niche or your focus area. It could be system side, or as he mentioned on the infrastructure side. Because at the end of the day, whether you think about cloud or on-premise or whatever, at the end of the day, everything revolves around networking, compute, and storage, right? So the more strong your foundation is, you can hop into any domain in the user space, as we say, right? So you don't have to worry about the back end side. So I think when you are starting off your career, even you are a fresh graduate or you are 2-3 years of experience, I think having a very strong fundamental will always help. And now, how to make sure that you can connect the dots with your theory to practical? I think this is where you can take open source tools and technology around. So I still remember when I started with Kubernetes, I just thought to learn that because that was the trend that we were seeing after virtualization, VMware and all. I just thought to learn that, but it has nothing to do with my day-to-day work at that point in time. And I wanted to contribute, and I was not getting anything around Kubernetes at that point in time, but still I wanted to learn. And one of the engineer suggested me that you learn and try to play around, deploy that, and then if you want to contribute, you can just review the documentation for that project, and that's how you get connected, and that's how you know which skill to focus on, where to focus on, because we cannot be an expert on everything, right? But we should start from the fundamental and then go up in the ladder. Otherwise, what will happen is after 10 years or 5 years, you will again go back to the fundamentals to learn something what is happening, in the upper in the stack.
I would like to add to that, right? Because there are so many plethora of roles, technology stacks, we often say we need to be T-shaped, one in-depth and broader skills. But I would recommend PI. Go with the PI. You need to have at least 2 core technical skills, in-depth foundational knowledge, whether it is related to the hosting environments or to the coding, right? You absolutely need it. Once your fundamentals, foundational skills are strong, then sky is the limit. You can explore anything in your career. You might become front-end, back-end, full-stack developer, or any other persona that you would like to.
Thanks. Let's ask Deepak. Now, Deepak runs his own recruitment firm, and he's had a couple of decades of experience in creating careers for people. Now, he'll encounter way more technologies than we all encounter. And he has to know those technologies without getting a chance to try all of them out, right? Like if you're creating careers for people, you can't keep trying out all technologies. So how does Deepak learn without getting an option to, or without getting the luxury of spending time in his office or in his cubicle, playing around and having fun with technologies? Or does he still do that?
Thanks, Shri. That's a great question. So, a generalist like us, fortunately or unfortunately, you'll encounter us to be your first screening point before you go and talk to the expert panel, right? So what I do personally is I learn a lot of new jargons and technologies majorly through Google, and try to be part of certain groups and try to understand as much as we need to understand. What I focus when I talk to candidates, potential candidates, is 3 things. One, are they curious to learn? Do they have structured problem solving? Can they repeatedly apply the curiosity and structured problem solving to become experts? Now, these 3 are fundamental whether you want to be an expert in that technology or this technology. Curiosity to learn. My questions are around how quickly do you refresh your knowledge? Where do you go and learn? How do you spend your time in learning? Second thing is, do you have a structured problem solving approach? Very simple, right? I mean, how do you break down a problem? Do you have a logical flow of thoughts? Third thing is, do you repeatedly do this? Historically, have you done it? If you have done it, take me through those instances. So a proper behavioral questioning technique is good enough for you to even unpeel some of the technologically complex projects that you have done. I may not be a technology expert, but making sure we focus on fundamentals and we start peeling the candidate competencies. Yeah.
No, that's an excellent answer. Now, coming to Bharat, right? Bharat runs a very successful startup which has won many awards, and he continuously hires people. Now, while you do that, right, I was just curious to know, among the people that you hired in the last year or 2, can you mention one character that stood out where you admire, wow, this was a nice person that I hired because of this character? What did you like? And
yeah, ability to learn quickly whatever is thrown at you, right? That is something which I really admire in a couple of guys we have got. The second thing, what basically I really look forward to, what I think Deepak also mentioned, the logical or analytical reasoning, right? How are you logically be able to think a problem, right? Whatever is thrown at you, and then go ahead and try figuring out how you can go ahead and solve it, right? These are the two things which we have been really looking at people now.
Do you frequently get such people?
We definitely get, and in fact, we are able to get it from tier 2, tier 3, or smaller cities as well.
Yeah, but on top of that, you also need to look at the adaptability too, right? This is all I know. Give me a project which matches this skill profile. That's not going to happen in the real world. You really need to be open to learn and be adaptable to the situation and try to apply.
So there's something that, I mean, though I trust all of you, right? There's still some confusion in my mind because when I look at technologies, it's changing so fast. Like everything is moving towards containerization, and if I can, everything that I want to use, whether it's AI, ML or anything, everything seems to have been coded already. I can consume those APIs. I can quickly stand up an application in the shortest time, whether I'm developing an app or whether I'm developing a program, or the move seems to be more towards microservices, containerization, or low code, no code. And so as a techie, I kind of feel, why should I learn the fundamentals? And there's so much happening where I can quickly do things. Will I become obsolete if I mean, whatever programming skills I'm building, will I become obsolete? So how do I deal with so much of noise and incessant waves of disruptive technologies? Should I focus on technologies or should I focus on skills? Even if I focus on technologies, there are way too many happening. So what's your solution to that?
So I think to summarize your question is we are living in a world where we have so many things around and it's very easy to get distracted. Right? So there are two things to look at least based on my experience, is you can be someone, first is you need to be very curious that you really want to learn. It's not like you got a job and it's going on, you are a software engineer, then senior software engineer, principal, staff. So this is not a growth, this is a normal progression, just like how we grow, like for standard 1, standard 2, standard 3. So this is not a growth, this is just a normal progression. But let's say you are curious, you want to learn things. There are two things that might happen in your life. One is your company or the organization or the project that you're working on, that itself is cutting edge and you don't have to spend off the cycle time to learn something new. Very few people are lucky to be in that kind of environment. And the other part, other category would be you're working on something very good, but still, you feel that based on the conversation that you are having or based on the people you are talking to, that there are other things that are happening which are more niche, at least according to you at that point in time, and you want to level up there. So in that case, you live two lives, one during the daytime, and in the evening time you start learning, and that's when things like doing some course, certification, all of that comes into picture. I think one important thing which is very, very, very important in today's time is to stick to your focus area and don't get distracted by things which are happening outside of your focus area. Once you complete one thing, then you can jump to the other thing. I think that will help you to grow. You can actually measure that what you have done over last 1 year. Otherwise, you will just be hopping around, right? So that is very important. And the last thing is there is a myth, at least with the folks which I spoke to. They feel that to get into, let's say, if I take my example or the domain that I am in, to get into the cloud, you need to know cloud, right? So, but that is, not the thing. If you come and decide to join AWS, no one is going to ask you anything around cloud because they don't expect you to know that. And that's what goes to the same thing. You have to get your fundamentals right. But what people actually look into when they talk and interview is whether you can learn. You have that fire inside you to learn something new. There are a lot of people I've seen, very good engineers, but they're not that curious to learn something new, right? So I think you don't have to get it, because this is not a rat race, right? So I am learning Docker today, tomorrow serverless. I mean, you don't have to do all of that. So it's very important, very much important to, make a shell around you as far as the learning is concerned, and complete that whole path before you jump into something else. Otherwise, you will keep hopping.
Yeah, I would echo with that because we always feel the grass is greener on the other side all the time. So don't put your hands into too many things. Focus on one or two, make sure you succeed in that.
Yeah, very true. As a part of my job, as part of, within the CTO org, we do encounter a lot of technologies which are still yet to become hot, in the sense, you look at even technologies that are not yet in demand, but at the same time, what we can all assure you is that the way to learn, the way to approach, the way to know something, that doesn't change. The fundamentals are the same. Retain your curiosity, and as long as you're comfortable with what you don't know and confident about what you know, that puts you on track. Now, switching gears to the community, in open source, nothing exists without the community, in the sense everything is managed by the community, or everything you do, a lot of times you run it to the community, and the definition can keep changing. So Bharat, when somebody says be a part of the community, contribute to the community, and should I just go write code, or what does it mean to be a part of the community, or contribute to the community, or grow with the community? How does community play a role?
Yeah, so if you look at, right, open source actually a lot of time has a connotation that, okay, we are talking about a large community, right? A good set of people who are really experts in what they do and willing to share it with others, right? And if you look at, right, for last, 20, 25, 30 years, since when this open source has been named, right, there has always been a lot of small groups, which you can call as community, are always fostered upon a specific set of problem they want to solve, right? So if you look at, I am one of the co-founders of another society called IIESOC, India Internet Engineering Society, and that is a community for people who want to contribute to IETF, India Internet Engineering Task Force, which basically creates standards for internet, how internet function, right? So when we started sometime in 2003, 2004, India started contributing to IETF. At that time, there was no community. But slowly, when people started contributing to this, the whole community has now have become a pretty large community where a lot of people are coming together and contributing to it. Similarly, if you look at FOSS.in was there since 2000, Open Source India is happening. So that way, whatever part you are interested in, and I am sure that you will be surprised if you really go do Google search, you will find at least hundreds of people who would be interested in almost similar things, right? And that's where the community really comes in picture. And once you start doing something, if you look at, right, if you come up with an idea today, and then you do a search, you will definitely be surprised that the same idea has been crossed or been worked upon by so many other people, right? And that's when you start connecting with them. You basically take up people who have already been doing this for years as a mentors, and then start contributing to the community to really learn more about things, whatever you are interested in.
On top of that, once you are contributing, you are building your own profile, your own resume. That is even more attractive than putting, like, I work for this company on a number of projects. If you have your profile, GitHub profile, or anything where you have contributed to open source, that becomes very attractive.
That's a good segue to the next question or next segment. How do you position yourself? How do you sell yourself? Or how do you set up yourself for success? You spoke about the GitHub profile.
Yes.
Let's build on that. What else can we do? Or we'll end that with Deepak summarizing what kind of profiles has he seen succeed, and how is that changing? Maybe we'll go. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think When we hire people, I mean, when I say we, it's not only Amazon, but any company for that matter, is we need to understand that your first gateway to success or to that company is the resume, obviously. And these days, trust me, HRs are more technical than hiring managers. I mean, I know a lot of HRs, they do the first level of screening, and the hiring manager just, because they have been talking to candidates and they know, if anything is fishy or anything of that sort. So I think one thing which is very important to know is interview is just, a thing which is bounded by a couple of hours of time, and you cannot showcase everything in that 5 or 6 hours of your interview or what you have done in last 5-10 years, starting from your school days. So it's very important that you have enough literature and collaterals which you can portray and showcase to the company, so that they don't go into a traditional hiring process. For example, we have in our team someone, his name is Rob Zhu. He has been working on GraphQL for a long time. And when he joined Amazon, they did not have, they just learned about him from his GitHub repo. They just learned about him by the blogs that that person has written. And the team just hired him. So it's not like there were not other engineers, who applied for that position were not good. They were equally good, but the organization picked him because he has provided more than what is required, the information that is required on the first place itself. So the HR will come back to the engineers or the engineering manager that, hey, this guy looks like he's doing exactly same as what Deepak is doing in your team. And that's the bias that you set by your work towards open source, and by things which is not general or which is not expected, as to say. So I think this is very important that you make a very good profile, as she mentioned about making a GitHub repo, creating your own projects. And it could start from Hello World program. It's not like you have to make something very fancy. No one is going to read through your whole code and everything. But at least this shows that you are proactive, you know how to do things, so that the company can spend less time on ramping you up, and straight away you can do something meaningful for the organization and for yourself.
And in many companies, you also see, right, to judge your technical skills, apart from having your wonderful resume and profile, you might also need to go through some codility tests or some online tests, right? So that will also help the recruiters to filter out the candidates. That's where the coding skills, foundational, fundamental skills are required, no matter what type of role you are applying for any company. Then you can focus more on your different skills during the interview process, how you are able to handle tough situations, establish relationship, how you are able to address a complex situation, right? Those traits will be looked at during the interview process. But technical skills, yeah, we have many tools to judge how good you are.
Just like designers have profiles that they can send out, right? Like, this is my portfolio. And developers have their GitHub link that they'll send. Have you seen developers create portfolios or profiles and send it to you when you're hiring?
Yeah, it is usually available in resume, but as I think what Suman mentioned, right, that you have to have one first, right? And then obviously make sure that you are putting in those projects which you are doing as your hobby projects also, because that also gives a lot of view into how you are thinking, what you are doing, how do you write code, what sort of documentation you do, and so on. So that basically gives a very good view into if I am going to hire you, how you will fit into the whole game of my company, like that, right?
Yeah, just 30 seconds on the resume part, which you mentioned, is one thing which is very common is I've seen, including myself, we used to have one resume and that we share for all the roles that we apply. And I don't know how many of you know, but in big organizations where you have plenty of people, the resume gets screened automatically through a system, using AI and machine learning. So now it's very much important that you modify your resume based on the job description that you are applying for, because that is the first screening. It's not like you should put the words which are mentioned in the job description to sell yourself. It's not like that. You cannot go that far, right? I mean, they will catch you. But the thing is, you should modify the resume based on the role that you are applying for, and that will increase your probability to get the first call. And after that, it's all about your skill sets. But it's very important that you don't make a generic resume and float across all the organization.
Yeah, Deepak,
Yeah, I
if
think
you can talk about looking at all the things that we shared now, what kind of profiles have you seen click, and what's the secret there?
Interestingly, I have seen a lot of resumes to be creative documents about their representation. They're creating that as a brand. This is a new trend, which is refreshingly different, right? So people use, to be granular, they use different fonts, colors, graphs, a very creative representation of what they've done. And a lot of people also have links or the GitHub profiles wherever I have done the project. You can actually go and see my code. So that builds credibility. One is Jazz. A nice package sells better with content. So if you are able to package your resume with content which is verifiable, it's much, much easier, and the trust and the credibility that your resume has is high. The second part to that, what Suman mentioned was, today there are a lot of services available where you pay X amount and your resume is made to be appearing in the top bracket of license that you buy. That will only get you so far. That will get you the first call. So beyond that is actually who you are and what's your right representation. Not every product which is a bestseller has the same packaging. Don't copy resumes. So it is your own creative representation of who you are, and that's your creative brand representation. I call it, I was giving an example of a catalog of an automobile, right? So it is your own representation of what brand you are, your wordings, the way it is coming up across is your own personality. So spend a lot of time in making your resume. Lot of what I have seen with people is they wait till the end. They are like frustrated. Tomorrow morning they have to apply. They'll scribble something and they start working on it. So your resume is an ongoing document of what you have done, and it's a professional summary. Whether you're looking for a job or not, every 6 months, please update it in a creative way when you are in the nice frame of mind. Not when you fought with your boss and you're absolutely angry.
Absolutely. So on the who you are thing, I wanted to add something. It applies to open source careers as well. When you look at a career of more than 20, 30 years, initially it's about what you know, correct? What knowledge do you have, what skills have you built? And slowly it transitions to what you are capable of. In the sense, can I develop, can I test, can I document it, can I manage it end to end? Then with a few years it turns into what you are capable of, what you have done. In the sense, like Shirin was mentioning about your GitHub profile. So you build credibility in terms of your own results. Ultimately, as you grow more towards higher roles, it becomes a question of who you are, in the sense, who you are as a person. What values do you carry? Like we spoke about values so many times, being curious, being helpful, sharing, learning from others. So many times the reputation that you build about who you are, that decides whether others want to work with you, others want to be with you, in the sense, do others want to contribute to your success? Now if you look at what you know, what you're capable of doing, and then ultimately who you are, all of them take time to build, in the sense you need patience, and you start early, you build over a period of time. Talking about starting early, now if you look at experienced professionals, let's say I want to start adding more open source to my career, and I'm an experienced professional. So does that mean I'm starting late, or how do I start if I'm a, let's say, professional with 20 years of experience? Maybe I want each of the panelists to touch upon that. If I want to start getting involved more with open source, how do I know that I've not missed the bus and I can even start today?
That is one of the most interesting thing with open source, right? And age is no bar, right? I mean, you will see people like 50 years, 55 years, people also submitting patches to various things. So I don't see it as a restriction at all that you should be worried about, okay, I am already 40 or 45 and should I really start now? So it's all about passion. If you're really passionate about some problem which you're trying to solve and an open source solution is available, start contributing it to it and then make your passion work.
Yeah, but it is amazing to see kids in high school or even in colleges for summer internship or so, right? They start building their profile in GitHub and start adding the code there. I think that is a wonderful way to start, but of course, age is no bar. It is a journey, you can start anytime, and there is no end to that.
Yeah, I think I've been saying this for the last 12 years that in IT we have only young people, and now I'm almost 12, 15 years, so it's surely not for only young people. So I think age or any of these procrastination that we'll do it later or it's too late, these all are excuses. Right? So you will find people who are starting learning to code at even mid-40s. So it's all about, what you are passionate about. If you're not passionate about it, it's okay. This is not the end of the world. You have better things to do. But if you are really want to do something for open source or for anything for that matter, I think age is, the last thing that you should think about. And one thing might differ as you grow is where and how you can contribute, right? So if you are a manager or a director and there you want to start off, so maybe you can, your perspective to contribute would be a little different. Like you will do more around mentorship, learn from your team and contribute and guide because you have experience, right? The young engineers may not have that experience. So you have to, you may, you make some calibration on how and where to contribute, but you can always start, whenever you feel you really want to do that.
Thanks, Suman. So I know we overshot time by a few minutes. So any questions? Let's turn to the
What do you
audience.
have to say about techgig.com hackathons? I, being both a software engineer, but just because of my backache problem, I had to shift to teaching in a university as an AIML professor. But what really I found, I'm associated with AICT also in MOOCs, and what one of you mentioned just now, I also didn't found like those real-time projects with the students. We will just teach the theory with the university students. But after that, I did my PhD in teaching in cognitive diseases, and when I saw techgig.com, so and recently we won up this with entity data. We won a second runner-up in that. So I found that it makes you I won with the student. So it makes a student to work on a real-time project. So they get an exposure that, and after that, what questions they asked. It was some research problem on epilepsy, and they asked the last question on latency. Everything was okay with them, and I think that what do you think hackathons can also help in the hiring process and working on a real-time
Sure.
encourage the students to work on a real-time project.
Without going into a specific platform, we'll just convert that into a generic question. What roles do hackathons play in shaping up careers, whether it's in the beginning or later?
Yeah, so a lot of companies actually do have a hackathon. In fact, which I was talking about, IETF, they also do a hackathon. The first day where they bring in people from different communities and then they give them a problem statement or a protocol to implement, right? Which basically help the teams also to understand the practical use cases of whatever basically they are implementing.
But we have conducted hackathons at Shell as well, and I wouldn't name the person, but we internally discussed like this person really did well, we should bring him into Shell. So that's also another way of hiring.
Yeah, I think most of us sometimes look at hackathons as a way to even screen talent or gamify the hiring process sometimes. One of the things I personally want to share is that hackathon is not just about your capability, participate in one. it's a character building exercise also. It not just test your capability, you solve so many things in such a short time. You need to experience that acceleration that happens. It's just like all other good experiences, hackathon is a great experience as well. And just like capabilities are important for a career, character that get built as a part of experience, that's also important.
And in fact, I would always also like to thank Microsoft also. Recently, we are also participating in Bank of Baroda Hackathon. In this, Microsoft has, we were not exposed to Azure AI, but I won't mention the name also. They had trained us online on Azure AI, right? And it was new experience. We did not have exposure to it. And now, after that, after in the second round, one mentor from Microsoft will be given to us, to per team it will be given, who would be helping us on developing our ideas and software with the help of Azure AI. So both as a software professional and a professor as a researcher, I found this to be a very good initiative.
Yes,
Thank you.
We could take further questions offline because we are extending into the next session, I guess. So we are available across, so you can talk to any of us. We definitely will love to interact with you offline. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and look forward to more interactions.